Good evening and welcome everyone. I call the January 16th Special City Council meeting to order. The purpose of this meeting is to hear presentations by applicants to fill the current vacant council position number 3. City Clerk Tina Eggers, will you please provide a brief overview of the process for tonight's presentations?
Yes, thank you. The recruitment period closed on January 9th and 14 applications were received. Earlier today, we received notification from John Burrell Levine that he was withdrawing from consideration. Presentations will be heard in the order as shown on the screen and as indicated in the council packet. Please note that applicant Rick Swanson is traveling out of state and will be joining us by phone. And presenters are provided up to 10 minutes to address the council. There will be a visual timer at the dais, or at the lectern, excuse me. And you are encouraged to speak to the application questions that are of greatest importance to you. And if you have any supplemental materials, if you can provide those directly to me at the conclusion of your comments, I can distribute those to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. So every addition to our council is an opportunity to increase and broaden the knowledge and interest base of the whole council, providing the broadest possible community representation. We know how much time and dedication it takes to be an effective council member, and this next year will be full of challenges. This means that selecting a truly engaged candidate is vital. So good luck to all of our 13 applicants, and I'd like to allow Council President Martz to provide a few comments as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I just want to take a moment and take you back to March 1st, 2011, which was the first of the appointments that I sat on council for, and it was for Maureen McCary's seat. And we had, in the end, we heard on that night from Stacy Goodman, Paul Winterstein, Mary Lou Pauley, and a number of other folks. We only chose one. Next time was the 22nd of January, 2013. Heard from a number of folks, including Bill Ramos, Mary Lou Pauley. Then in 2014, on the 21st of January, and by the way, that previous one was for Mark Mullet's seat. Then when Mayor Butler got elected, we had to fill his spot. Bill Ramos was one of the applicants. And then finally, when Jennifer Sutton joined the U.S. State Department, we had her seat to fill, and Mariah Batiste applied. And so what you see is that the majority of people on the dais here tonight have been part of the appointment process, and the majority of those did not get appointed the first time that they applied, and yet they persisted, and yet they are here as part of the leadership of the city. And so the appointment process is, for all but one of you, will be a step in your journey of engagement with the city. This is by far the most qualified applicant pool that I have seen. So I've done 5 of these. This is the most qualified group. I look at some of the experience that people have. HOA president, PPC, Eastside Human Services Forum, CERT, Leadership Eastside, ISF Board of Directors, King County Chamber Coalition, Issaquah Transportation Task Force. I mean, this is an immense set of candidates, and the majority of you would be able to walk into council tomorrow and do a great job. So I encourage you all to view it as a step in your engagement with the city. Do a great job tonight. This is a way to talk to the community about your engagement in the city, and so good luck this evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Council President Martz. Could I get our first presenter, Tim Flood, to come to the lectern?
I was joking. Good evening. Again, I think sounds like American Idol, where every year they say it's the greatest group of contenders we've ever had come. Good evening, City Council and my fellow applicants. I think a little bit ironic that it was an unopposed race and a vacated seat that led to 14 and now 13 applicants, but just goes to show you how deep the bench is within Issaquah. And I'm sure whether it's me or someone else, we'll end up with an excellent City Council member. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself and then go through a few of the highlights of my application. I don't know that'll take the full 10 minutes. My name is Tim Flood. I live in South Cove. I've lived in Issaquah for 6 years now. We moved in this past year, but as I told Councilman Ramos before tonight's meeting, I moved about 0.6 miles, so I wasn't leaving Issaquah, just a little bit bigger home as my family grows here in the city. I have my wife Lauren, who's a teacher in the Bellevue School District. I have a 3-year-old daughter named Kennedy, who is the light of my life, and we anticipate growing our family here in the years to come. On a professional level, I have an MBA with a focus in IT management, as well as a bachelor's degree, a stack of different educational certifications related to my career path. This year, I was proud to have published my first book. It is a children's book, but it's out there, and I'm very proud of it. Volunteering, right now I'm on my South Cove's HOA. I'm also a CERT. So why run for council? Well, we love the city of Issaquah. And we feel very fortunate, and as we see the surrounding areas continue to grow and the same problems we face with density and traffic grow and oftentimes worse in other areas in the Puget Sound, we see that we still have it really, really good here. So as I presented to the council before and said as I ran for council, I would see my job as really kind of preserving as best we can that standard of living that we have. We've kind of reached a place that is an enviable position. The traffic and congestion that we face is often a symptom of how desirable it is to live here. I think that my experience in running for council, serving on the Transportation Task Force, would make me an ideal candidate to come in and be able to contribute in what's an abbreviated term in council. So for me, as I ran for council, so I ran a full-fledged city council campaign. Congratulations to Councilman Ramos for having defeated me there, but finishing the top 2 in the primary and the top 2 in the general, as it turns out. But I garnered more than 3,000 votes in that time, and I think there's a couple others here that ran and lost, and I was discussing the virtues of having run with Councilman Martz before tonight's meeting, and either we're tenacious or we have a thick skull, but in any case, I think it goes to show when you dedicate basically 5 or 6 months of your life running a campaign, applying over and over for this position, that you have a tenacity and a desire to serve in the city council. So I was running, I focused on 3 things: traffic, protecting our green space, and improving the connection of the city. 2 other priorities that have come up, since that time to me are housing affordability and public safety. As I've run and as I've come and presented myself to the board before, I would, I guess I'll characterize myself as kind of idealistic and maybe at times not as realistic. I think what the past few years has shown me as I've been involved and served on a task force is really what the city council can do, what our regional partners can do, what we can try to influence versus what we can actually try to accomplish, how to go about those things and accomplish those things, how long things take, how much they cost, the process that we go through. And I can honestly say that I come this time more encouraged than I've ever been. So I've seen some positive changes that, given that experience and more realistic perspective, have given me encouragement, and really I think I'd make a good addition to the city council, and that I share some of those same goals and objectives as city council. So the traffic task force that I served on was a good example of us trying to tackle that challenge head on. The incremental changes we've seen in some of the roadway projects, so the traffic circle by Target and Trader Joe's, something that as I went and knocked on doors is something that people brought up, and that's something outside of the traffic bomb we've been able to accomplish. The other project that's going to connect Costco to East Lake Sammamish Parkway, well, it takes away that nice little secret passageway across the highway for 18 months, I think ultimately is going to be a really good thing to give another way out of there. So an incremental change, a smaller project that I think is going to have a big impact. I've also seen the building moratorium, which is something that I supported. And so when I ran for council, part of my message was to balance development with the traffic and infrastructure improvements, and I think that moratorium is kind of a mechanism to do that. So I was really encouraged with the council to take that step as well. It's also a good idea, something that I didn't know was possible, but we could make a rule to basically reroute bigger trucks away from downtown. And I applaud that kind of creative idea that is something that can have a positive impact. So it's going to, have a positive impact right here, where is our biggest choke point in the city, alleviate some of the worst traffic causers that were coming through. And then I mentioned having a more connected city, and we saw the creation of a community engagement officer. And so one of the questions here was, how can the city better solicit and incorporate feedback? I think that's a great step towards doing that. I've also seen that when there are different issues, there are multiple open houses, and the ability and to go and voice your opinion there. I think that the community does a pretty good job of that overall. I've got a chance to work with Emily a little bit and her staff as we were on the traffic task force as well. So if I were to accomplish one thing, in the abbreviated term I was on council, I'd like to take part in taking another stab at a transportation package that can address some of the traffic issues we had. On the transportation task force, we were tasked with coming together with a set of projects that would require 60% voter approval to come through. And we put together a package that garnered 56% approval. And so we fell just short. And I had what looking back now, I've looked at as kind of a clairvoyant moment where I within that task force, pointed out that if we made a couple of changes to the mix of projects in there, I thought we could have gotten 60%. And that was to make it a little bit more geographically representative, so that people from across the city could look at that list of projects and say, that project I will benefit from, and not look at it and say, well, that's addressing this, that, and the other, but it's really nothing in it for me. And I think some of those projects are very worthwhile, and I think some other ones we could drop off and replace with others that we identified then as good priorities, and since then maybe are even more pressing. With that, I know I'm going to wear near my 10 minutes here, but I think with the tenacity I've shown by applying repeatedly and running for council, along with the expertise that I've developed by running for council, serving on the transportation task force, and my willingness really to serve in the best way that my fellow council members would deem most appropriate in terms of other boards and commissions. I just ask you for your support.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Our next applicant this evening is Nate Perea.
Oh, the green light means go, huh? Okay. I learned quickly. Well, Madam Mayor, council members, I appreciate you having me here tonight and considering me for appointment. My name's Nate Perea. I live in the Issaquah Highlands. Start out real quickly with addressing that question of why would you apply for this role? And, since I've run for council and hosted the candidate forums this summer, I've been asked that question a lot. When are you going to run again? What are your plans, and when would you put your name in the hat? For me, it's been a real simple two-part answer, almost maybe too simple, and that is whenever I felt like there was a true need and I felt like I was in a position to help and offer my services, that's when I would plan to re-engage. So seeing as though we have a vacant seat right now and I'm in a position to help, I feel like my background will do that. That's why I'm here. Lived in Issaquah most of my life, moved here in 1986, and then back in 2006 with my family, my 3 children and my wife. So when I thought about what to present to you all tonight, I was trying to think a little bit about what I would look for in a council member to fill a vacant seat. And those things that I came up with would be that I'd look for a pragmatic decision maker, somebody who's going to be collaborative, listen, learn, work as 1/7 of a decision-making body, and be willing to work together. Someone who's familiar with the local and the regional public process and who's comfortable working in that public spotlight that we all know comes with the role. And finally, someone without a specific agenda or a single issue focus, but somebody who's willing to look at all the issues that are coming before the council and the city. We know that traffic, transportation, growth, public safety, all of these things are important, but I would bring that ability to look at all of them. So tonight, I wanted to share with you 3 elements of my background that I think would be important in filling this role. The first is going to be my experience with Leadership Eastside, where I graduated in 2015. The second will be my regional experience, working in a regional capacity all around our area. And then third will be my background working in the public spotlight and in that public process. So in 2013, I was one of about 40 people in East King County that was nominated for Leadership East Side. It's a 2-year leadership development program. Worked with all 40 of those folks from all over East King County in different varieties of work and life and background. And the goal there is to learn the principles of adaptive leadership. And adaptive leadership techniques really dive into collaborating with people to mobilize them to take on tough challenges, but not just to survive through that process, but to actually thrive in that process. And that's a big deal for Leadership Eastside, is being able to thrive when the pressure's on. 3 of the key things that I carry with me from my time at Leadership Eastside that I take with me a lot, actually, in all elements of life, I'd like to share with you. The first one being that this idea that all perspectives are accurate, but they are only partial. And why that's important to me is that as you're attacking an issue or coming to the table together to surround an issue and work on it, it's important to understand that the perspective that everybody brings to the table is accurate. It is their perspective, but it is only a piece of the puzzle. Nobody has the full perspective on any issue, and it's important to try and build that entire picture. The second element that I bring with me a lot is this idea that with change always comes loss. And why that's important for me is that as you're looking at a city like Issaquah that's changing and growing and will continue to do so, big changes, there's always somebody that's going to lose from that. And as a leader and as a decision maker, it's important to identify that, acknowledge that, and be willing to take accountability for those losses. And then the final piece from Leadership Eastside that I go to often, especially when it comes to politics, is this idea of inviting the dissenting view to your table and bringing, as humans, we're naturally drawn to people that will reinforce our beliefs or like-minded individuals. And in a decision-making process, it's always best to have that dissenting view as a part of the conversation and be comfortable doing that. Very important part of that for me. When it comes to my regional involvement over the last 10 years, I've worked with both the Issaquah Chamber of Commerce and then as CEO of the Snoqualmie Valley Chamber of Commerce. And in those roles, I was fortunate I got to serve in a lot of regional capacities. This gave me a great understanding of not just what happens within the city, but what's going on in our region all around us that impact us every day. I spent about 6 years as a part of the East King Chamber Coalition, where I worked with people from 10 other cities in East King County, visiting the state legislature, sitting in their office, talking to them about transportation, the budget, education, some of those key elements of the state budget. And it also gave me a great understanding of how things work, like the Growth Management Act and the Puget Sound Regional Council, all of these things that are extremely impactful outside of Issaquah. When I worked out in Snoqualmie Valley, a big part of my job was to connect with the government and the city leaders from North Bend, Snoqualmie, Carnation, and Duval to tackle things like land preservation, land use, water rights, tourism, branding, all of these issues that impact a giant region with a lot of different stakeholders that needed to come to the table and discuss all of these things. And I was there to help facilitate that. I was also able to, while I was out in Snoqualmie Valley representing the business community, I was a member of the Snoqualmie stakeholder section of the Mountains to Sound Greenway Advisory Board. And this was really interesting for me because they'd never had a voice from the business community as a part of that advisory committee out there. And I was actually invited to be the keynote speaker to their annual dinner out in Snoqualmie later that year, which was a really rewarding experience as a member of the business community. Finally, in the public process and the public spotlight, I've served on the Urban Village Development Commission here for 2 years and another 4 years on the Planning Policy Commission, where I was involved in the start to finish evaluation of the Central Issaquah Plan when it first came before the commission to move it to council. And then I spent time at the Issaquah Highlands HOA as a voting member there, took on tough public meetings and addressing the community on assessments and budget issues and all of those things that super fun when you're the volunteer at the front. So definitely had that experience. My time in Snoqualmie, I actually held a contract with the city of Snoqualmie to deliver economic development services. So I was a regular attendee and presenter to council committee meetings, the development or community development committee of the council, the finance committee of the council, and then I met weekly with the mayor and the city administrator to deliver updates on business recruitment, downtown revitalization, and infrastructure needs and that sort of thing. And then one of the last things I was able to do in my time in the Snoqualmie Valley, which was really cool, I was part of a advisory board on a really large public works project that was being put together by the city, basically connecting Snoqualmie Falls to downtown Snoqualmie by a river walk. And on that advisory board, I was able to give input on how that would look, how we wanted that to look and feel, and the character of the city to connect the downtown and really help revitalize that community. So it was a really, really great experience, and one that I was glad I was a part of. So if I am appointed to the seat, I'll bring all this experience with me so we can get started quickly, hit the ground running, tackling the big issues, growth, traffic, transportation, public safety, and all the other issues that we know are important. And then personally, one thing I would like to work on as a member of the council would be to strengthen and continue to grow the dialogue and the relationship with the school district and the school board. We know that we're going to have a good relationship there going forward to work on urban schools and school placement and all of those issues that are going to come up with them. Finally, and lastly, I just wanted to let the council know that I am available to take the seat as early as you guys make a decision, and if you feel I am the right candidate. I do have a pre-planned travel arrangement from February 19th through the 23rd with my kids. We're going to the beach. I can't tell them no. And the tickets are non-refundable. But outside of that, I am available and ready to serve. I would really welcome the opportunity to work with all of you, so thank you for having me.
Thank you, Nate. Next up, I'd like to call Maria Gorfinkel to come up and talk.
I'm very impressed with these two people. I don't know what to tell you. Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Amazing. That's beautiful. I'm from Florida. I've been here 2 years. And I'm rather impressed because, you know, just the two of you, forget it. You got my vote. Anyways, I mean, seriously. Anyhow, I've made some notes. You have to excuse me. I've been living in Issaquah for 2 years. I'm a Cuban immigrant. I've lived in South Florida for over 50 years. I've seen all the changes in South Florida, the good and the bad. There have been many changes. I feel that Issaquah is in a critical position right now, in a critical time, because the decisions that are going to be made here are very important, and will determine the type of life that will be here in Issaquah, as we saw a change in South Florida. Not the same changes, but the changes are going to be intense, and they have to be really well thought out, because they're going to mean there's going to be a lot of meaning coming from those things. The first question, what would I would contribute? I'm a real estate broker. I've watched how zoning decisions have affected the quality of all the residents, of all the people that live in the areas that are having growth right now here, as they were before. I will make a point to fully understand and investigate how requested zoning changes would affect the quality of life and the environment here. You got a beautiful city here. I mean, this place is beautiful. I mean, I've been living in the beaches all my life, but the mountains, I mean, the deers, for God's sakes. You know, you see a deer here and there. It's, the birds, everything is really beautiful. It has to be taken care of. How would you make decisions on issues that divide the community? Very carefully. It is of the utmost importance to bring into discussion all persons, so that all different types of peoples are represented, all different types of wants and desires, because it is their city also. Listen to their wants in order to be able to come to a decision which would benefit the community as a whole, not to benefit just a certain portion, but hopefully make everyone somewhat happy. Always keeping in mind that peace and security of the city of Issaquah is really the most important thing. The last thing is, if selected to fill the vacancy, what would like to accomplish? I would like to bring the voice of all the residents of Issaquah in our discussions, so that their questions and concerns can be heard. Because they're the people that are making the city. They're the people that are going to be living in the city. The changes here have to be parts of what they desire. There's growth. There's definite growth, and I know that for some people it's very difficult to change, to go here, to go there. But it can be done. It can be done as long as the environment is respected, as long as the city is respected, as long as the goals of the people of this city, which I see, it's a very family-oriented city. And it's beautiful, because I see kids walking around. You know, they're walking here, they're walking there. It's beautiful. You take the bus, you go here, you go down to I mean, it's just really, really nice to see this. Miami, unfortunately, has lost it because it's become like a Manhattan. And I like Manhattan, but not to be more there for 4 days, but yeah, nevertheless. So anyhow, that's it for me. I know that you guys are so much more than I am, and that's wonderful. I have no problems with that. I just hope that everything, that you guys remember to you know, keep the people in mind. Listen to what they have to say. That way, it grows in the way in which makes everybody happy. You know, that way the city grows the way they, you know, everybody here wants it to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Next up, Claude Blumenzweig.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here. Congratulations, Ms. Mary Lou Polly, for your on your mayoral position. And I'd like to start out by saying my name is Claude Blumenzweig, and I'm the owner of Vino Bella Wine Bar right down the street, 99 Front Street. That's just a plug-in for myself. And I've resided in Issaquah for 14 years now, and I had the opportunity to run for mayor this last summer, and I had a really great experience with running this thing. And the biggest thing that I learned in Issaquah is an excellent community. This is a strong and a dedicated leadership. My plan, if I were to become on the city council, is to listen to all constituents and deal with the local challenges and issues. Also, meeting with the various merchants and residents and put our growing at all levels. Running for mayor has taught me a lot. You know, in this, I didn't win the race, but I learned a lot in the community, a lot about myself, and a lot about I had a unique, exhilarating experience of my life. My core strength has been in running several successful business for the last 11 years, and I will work hard as I did in the last 40 years that I have been. If I was given the opportunity to run on the Issaquah City Council, my competency can surely help the residents and merchants in the basic community. I think I have local businessman. I am a local businessman and help balance the ideas and the perspectives on the council. Another passion is in the traffic. I do realize how much work has already been put into it, and I know that there's a lot more to go into it. And being on the council, I believe that, you know, working together with the council, we can come up with different ideas and share some of the ideas that they've already had, and just me working hard at it to help the community actually, you know, work on our traffic that help the merchants and our constituents down here. As a business owner and a resident of Issaquah, I want to help my community. I have lived in Issaquah for 14 years and proud to call it my home. I've raised 2 children here, and who actually helped me run my business, so that would afford me to be able to become on and do a lot more on the committee. I want to help manage some of the growth and to also help resolve some of the traffic issues we're having. Also, my experience is merchant and business in Issaquah gives me a unique perspective to help the council business decision. I would put my heart and soul into the position, and I would guarantee my involvement in any level of the community, for the community. I'm a natural connector. I love putting people together, creeds, races, and genders. I thought I brought a staple into Issaquah, which is Vino Bella, which has actually helped a lot of our community be together. And so it actually was one of our first bars in Issaquah that help put everybody together, which has made a lot of friends and put a lot into our community. Like I said, I would make it very short by saying that if given the opportunity, I will put my heart and soul into the position, and I am willing to do whatever it takes, and I'm available 24/7 to do anything it takes to help the council and help our city. I love our city of Issaquah. I believe it's not just a city, but I believe it's a true community from anywhere else around that I've lived at. It is a true community, and that's my time.
Thank you very much, Claude.
Thank you.
Next, I invite Bob Landers up to speak.
Hey, guys. Well, good evening, Mayor, council members, other candidates, as well as the rest of the audience. First of all, thank you, each of you, those that are in the audience and the council and the mayor and the staff for your daily efforts to make Issaquah a good place to live. You aren't told enough about how much we appreciate it, so thank you. Thank you also for giving me the opportunity tonight to share why I would be a good candidate to fill the open council position. As I was preparing for my comments tonight, I reckoned back to the days when I was in elementary school. And I remember when people were selected, young children were selected to be captains of teams, and they were to pick the people in the group to say who's going to be playing kickball on my team and who's going to be playing kickball on someone else's team. And typically, the person that was not known because they were either new to the school or they were in a different group of people was never selected. And sometimes that created great disappointment. So as I reflected on it, I said, I do not know most of you, and most of you I've not worked with because I have had another profession that did not allow me to do that. Now I have time to do that. And so tonight's objective is for me is to educate you on who I am, and then for you to make the decision, am I a good candidate for you as a member of the council team? So when I talk about that, it's not about what I've done professionally or academically. I provided all that information in the council application. So if anyone has any questions about my background, feel free to reach out to me and I can provide clarification. I also hope that the council will be willing to share those background profiles with the community so that those in the community who do not know the candidates will have good information as they provide information to you as council members and their feedback on who the candidate should be. So why me and why the council? The big picture answer is that in everything I've attempted to do academically or professionally, I've done it in a way to achieve excellence, not mediocrity, not the status quo, but excellence. And that happens through things such as trying to make complex issues more simple so that everyone understands what the opportunities are, and then also making sure that we don't lose sight of the big picture and keeping the end in mind, and making sure that what we're solving to is a common vision, set of values, so that, again, we aren't not caught into the weeds, but rather we're looking at the big picture. And there are three things that help accomplish that. One is effective teams. Secondly is making sure we unleash the potential of people. And lastly, why not? So effective teams. When I participate in teams, which I would on a council, things that I look at doing personally to contribute to your success. One is if I'm a contributor, sole contributor, is to make sure I fully understand what my level of responsibility is and to understand what the expectation is. Secondly is to make sure I collaborate with others and not solely limit to my own views, but collaborate with others and their perspective. And finally, make sure I exceed in delivering expectations above and beyond. Secondly, if in a leadership role in any capacity, I work under a servant leader mindset, and that is to make sure that the teammates that I'm leading have the ability to understand what the expectations are, what success looks like, that they have the tools and the resources to be successful, be it a staff member or be it the council or be it, again, citizens volunteering, to make sure they got what they need and then celebrate and recognize their successes. Secondly, on making sure that we empower people. We are fortunate, as many have already said, that our community, and I've lived in close to a dozen different communities across the country, we're fortunate to have people that care. In fact, 82% of the people in a recent survey voted, right? And they said, we want to have an input. But later on, I'll comment about some opportunities relative to that. But we need to make sure that we find ways to unleash the potential of the people in our community and unleash the potential of the people in staff positions. We frequently get caught up in day-to-day activities, and we don't understand about how to get out of those activities and make a difference. And so that's an opportunity for the council. The other thing I think is a big opportunity for all of our city government is to make sure that we stamp out this mindset of I win, you lose. Our society today has too much of that, and we need to create an environment in order to unleash people's full potential that says I win and you win. And finding ways to do that in all of our decision making, working more collaboratively with people, getting feedback, being open-minded, as some of the candidates have already suggested, is critical to that success. So unleashing people's potential by I win, you win. And lastly, why not? Why not is that mindset that says anything's possible. And I think that's an opportunity for our city. I'm fond of the saying, and try to practice it, that frequently people say it can't happen are interrupted by those that are doing it. And so we have an opportunity as a leadership council and as a community to say we think things are greater possible than what we've already assigned. So how to put that in practice? So that's all concepts and mom and apple pie type of thinking. So let's take the recent citizen survey, the 2017 survey. In that survey, there was a lot of good information. In fact, as you read it, 92% of the respondents said that Issaquah was an outstanding or great place to live, and that's encouraging. But if you dig down deeper into the information, you see some concerning opportunities that provide each of us some guidance. One is in the community characteristics section, there were 45 questions. And of those questions, only 8 or 18% was the respondents said that we were better than the rest of the country. Only 18%. My question is, why not 75% by the time we get to the next survey? Why not think big? Why not have high expectations and fully embrace what's possible versus saying, as candidly our current vision statement says, that we want to make this a high quality place of living versus we want to make this a world-class place of living. So my charge is, are we thinking big enough, or are we just satisfied with the status quo? So let's take that concept and apply some activities. What would suggestions I would have to that effort? The first is to make sure, as I mentioned, is that our vision is inspiring to the community and that people see it, we repeat it frequently, and they get excited about making this the best place in the world to live, not just a high-quality place, not just a good place. And then make sure that for all the 10 districts in our community that they have inspiring visions for that particular area to make sure that they achieve what's possible. And then correspondingly support that with a healthy mission statement and corresponding guiding principles. Secondly is to make sure that we allocate the resources, and that is our great staff, that is the council, that is the business community, that is the volunteers, to allocate, and most probably equally important, our finances, to what's important to the citizens. We all know that and have heard that affordable housing is important, and we need to work on that. But if we look at that survey, and I understand it's just one source of feedback from the consumer, look at that survey, it says that traffic is a bigger issue. And so my question would be is, have we allocated the financial resources, the people resources, the minds, the volunteers at a proportionate amount of how important traffic is? I mean, y'all know it. I spent 20 minutes today getting a half mile. So it's an opportunity for us to say, are we making decisions not based upon trying to make everyone happy and spread peanut butter across the entire sandwich, but making sure that we're focused on the most critical activities. I guess I'm running out of time. And then lastly, leverage this concept of how do we get people more engaged? How do we fully empower people? It's not simply communication. It's about connecting. John Maxwell has a great book out, Everyone Communicates, But Few Connect. And I think that's an opportunity. When you look at the survey, and 82% of the people say that they vote in local elections, but only 16% of the people say they have talked to an elected official, or only 22% say they watched one of these meetings. That says that we've communicated, people want to be involved, but we haven't been able to connect. So again, thank you for the opportunity of sharing a little bit about who I am, how I think, how I make decisions. I think my professional and academic career will show that I can apply those practices and have success. I really do believe very great quality candidates. I likewise believe, now that you know a little bit more about me, that you would consider me a good and strong candidate, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Bob. Next up is Jamie Rosen.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Pauley, city staff, and fellow Issaquah residents. My name is Jamie Rosen, and I've put myself forward for the vacant council seat number 3. In these next few minutes, I plan to share with you and fellow residents watching a bit about myself, why I'm compelled to stand up, what I can bring to the council in our city, and why I'm best fit for this vacant seat. I've lived within the Issaquah city limits on and off for 5 years. First, just outside of Old Town, and now in the Issaquah Highlands. I've lived in the Puget Sound area for almost 20 years, and in the far east side, as I like to call the I-90 corridor that stretches between Issaquah to North Bend, for the last 10 years. I'm the proud mother of 2 curious, energetic, kind, and playful girls named Aspen and Emily, ages 6 and 2 respectively, that shortly will probably be poking their heads in here to giggle at Mom. I have a kind, committed, and thoughtful husband named Bryan, who was originally to blame for bringing me out to the Far East Side. Together, we call Issaquah home. Professionally, I've been fortunate to have a diverse set of experiences with one unifying theme: solving complex problems through leadership, fearlessness, and inspired collaboration. I've started 2 businesses in the education space, working with Washington Business Week to create an online social network and mentoring platform, and another partnering with schools across the United States to travel hundreds of middle school students to countries like Costa Rica and Ireland. I've helped Bellevue College's OLS program, an incredible degree program for adults with learning disabilities, improve their community engagement and provide greater learning opportunities for students. I increased transparency, drove results, and inspired collaborative action during the dark final days of People to People Ambassadors Group in Spokane. I've been counted on to develop high-level strategy and associated tactical plans for million and billion-dollar companies such as Boeing and American Express. I've worked with airlines and governments to help them analyze aircraft acquisition decisions and devise plans to help grow their economy through increased accessibility and tourism. I've managed teams near and far. I've built and managed million-dollar budgets. I've held myself accountable and others accountable. I've hired and unfortunately fired. I've sought out help when needed. I've solved complex problems with multiple stakeholders. I've made tough decisions individually and collectively, and I've stood up for what I believe in. Civically, I've been driven by my passion to build community, increase transparency, and instigate community involvement. When we moved to the Wilderness Rim community, a 600-plus home community in unincorporated King County just outside of North Bend in 2008, I quickly saw a need to improve neighbor relations. After serving as the special events chair, I saw a greater need to help rebuild trust among a divided board and community. In my role as board member and treasurer, I improved financial transparency and inspired greater resident involvement through education. I've continued my commitment to my community in the region through my service as an Economic Development Commissioner for the City of North Bend and as a participant in the City of Snoqualmie's Citizens Academy, a free 7-week course offered by the city to provide residents a first-hand look at government operations. I continue to serve here in Issaquah, leading a Map Your Neighborhood initiative within my 70-home Sunset Walk community, helping organize a summer block party to facilitate relationships between my neighbors, and explaining HOA expenditures and reserve fund commitments as questions arise. I've attended numerous community meetings at Blakely Hall, tucked my daughters into bed while watching council meetings on ICTV, and encouraged neighbors to get involved with issues such as pedestrian safety, crime, and school development. I am confident I have the skills, passion, and commitment to serve our community and serve it well. So why do I stand before you today? Since moving back to Issaquah 2 years ago, I have been actively following and involved with city and council matters, and am energized by the pace of change, the complexity of issues, and the evolving demographics of our communities. Our city and the region at large is facing unprecedented growth in population and in physical development. The makeup of our city is changing. The needs and wants of our neighbors are diverse and constantly evolving. But at the same time, I've been frustrated by what I've seen. I see a city that is in uncharted territory, facing a pace of change unfamiliar to many, dealing with constraints, conflicting desires, increasingly complex problems, and enormous pressure to grow. Under this pace and pressure, I see people being asked to do more than they are capable of, decisions being made too quickly, and mistakes going unrecognized and unacknowledged. Execution is flawed, communication is breaking down, and trust, unfortunately, among our city staff, council, and residents is suffering. Specific issues such as the failed transportation package, the sudden development moratorium in central Issaquah, the discovery of contaminants in our water, the landslide in Tallis, the surprising decision around affordable housing on Track D in the Highlands, and the rushed and uncoordinated decision-making around the city's recently acquired land adjacent to the Highlands and a target for school development are just a few issues that have concerned me and motivated me to act. If selected for council, my first 2 years of service will be focused on rebuilding trust through community outreach, transparency, patience, and a fearlessness to tackle the high-priority issues with a critical eye while making decisions in line with the strategic direction we've set as a community. So now you know a bit about my background and what has motivated me to stand before you. Now, why should you select me above all these other wonderful candidates? Issaquah is changing. Our residents have no longer lived in the area for 20+ years. Many residents moving in have lived in half a dozen cities around the United States or even the world. They don't know of a time when the lights weren't on in the Highlands, or when Issaquah didn't have numerous major hotel chains to choose from, or when you used to be able to bike down Newport Way without fearing for your life, or when I-90 didn't even exist. These residents have lived around the world, have diverse perspectives, and speak different languages. They care for their family, their neighbors, and their community. But their voice is relatively silent as our system is not set up to easily involve our new neighbors. I have done my best to build community within my own local environment, but I believe there is so much more that can be done throughout the city. While I commit to representing the entire population of Issaquah, I commit to bringing volume to the voices of the new neighbors and families of Issaquah. When it comes to problem solving and decision making, I know when to ask for help and know how to find that help. Affordable housing, transportation congestion, crime, preserving nature amidst growth, using code and regulation to gently or forcefully attempt to control our future quality of life. These are not new issues. We are not the only city in the world to face these challenges. There are examples out there to pull from. There are people out there that have dealt with these situations. There are communities that have lived and learned, as we've heard tonight, from their decisions. Let's start seeking out help. Let's slow down, prioritize the issues that are most pressing, admit we don't have all the answers, and start working with others to propose solutions to these problems. And finally, and most distinctly, unlike many of our council members or applicants for this seat, I don't have a long, deep history within the Issaquah area. I don't have the constraining ties of 30-year relationships. I have not run numerous campaigns in the city, nor have I sat on commissions for years. What I have done is tried to bravely lead organizations, communities, and people to do better, to work together to solve problems, to seek help when help is needed, to ask questions, to be critical, to be honest and trustworthy, to be their best. I personally don't feel we need another subject matter expert on the council with deep history and experience in the area. We need a leader that can respectfully bring a fresh perspective, facilitate balanced decision-making, get things done, and help bring voice to the new residents and family that are joining our community every single day. I thank you for your time. I look forward to having the opportunity to speak in more depth with council members, staff, and residents. And I encourage residents to please get involved in this process. Reach out to current council. Let them know what's important to you with the selection process. And please feel free to reach out to me as well with any questions you may have. jamie.l.rosen@gmail.com. Fire away. I wish the council all the best in making this decision. To have 14 highly qualified citizens step forward to serve in our community in the role of city council speaks volumes. It's a privilege to stand beside each of you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Next up, Lindsey Walsh.
Hello, everybody. I'm number 7, so we're halfway done. We can do it. I'm pleased to be here to talk about why I'd like to be considered for position 3 on the city council. Just so you know, no relation to Justin Walsh, despite the same last name. So, as a background for me, I went to school at USC for public policy planning and development, the intention to come out and become a city planner. And I came away from that with an appreciation for mixed-use development and multimodal transportation and the broken window theory of community policing. Life, however, took me in a different direction. I ended up building a business that I've run for the last 14 years. After graduating, starting a family, we knew we had to get out of LA, and being the geeks that we are, that ended up with a spreadsheet and a whole bunch of online research because we could really go anywhere. We chose Issaquah, and since we moved here 9 years ago, we knew that we had hit the jackpot. You know, there are so many things that make Issaquah special. Paragliders off of Poo Poo Point, the ability to go down to the farmer's market, the fact that we well and truly know our neighbors. And as a part of City Council, I want to be able to protect that small town community feel and make Issaquah even better going forward. That was why I began attending the City Council meetings in 2016 and considered running for this position in 2017 before deciding to get a little bit more experience on the Planning Policy Commission. And whoa, this past year on PPC has been quite an education. Everything that we've touched on in the moratorium, I think, speaks to the ways that we want to see Issaquah in the future. I've really enjoyed contributing to that conversation, but I want to take it a little bit further on City Council. So that's why I've spent the last year and a half really digging into all of the information about Issaquah. I've read the Central Issaquah Plan. I've read the Capital Improvement Plan, or what I call the other CIP. The TIP, the 2018 budget, the development agreements for Costco, Rowley, Tallis, and the Highlands, the comprehensive plan, in addition to every single one of the packets that City Council has received over the last year and a half. However, one of the things that I've noticed over that period is that public participation really isn't that great. We've got the same people who attend meetings over and over again. Because while you can use all of that information to become informed, it really doesn't mean that it's easy to get involved. So when I first decided to take the step of getting involved, it was intimidating to come down here. I didn't know where to park, where to sit, when to speak, what to say. And since then, when I've told friends about what's happening at City Council, I've received a similar idea. Oh, I don't know if I could come down there alone, or I'm too busy in the evenings, taking care of my family. It wasn't until I really started talking about our online survey system that I got positive feedback about becoming involved. So today, I mean, it's the digital age. We need to do more to get people involved using those methods. Right now, you can watch the City Council meetings on ICTV or YouTube, but that doesn't allow for actual engagement. I say all of this because I really feel like public feedback and participation is key at this time of transition in the city of Issaquah. We have the opportunity to get this either really right or really wrong, and we're going to pay for it in the future if we don't get it right. So I want to work with council to increase public participation in 3 ways. First, I think we should hold quarterly city council meetings in areas around the city that are closer to people's homes, not just always here. We know that the IT staff is looking into ways to film other commissions. Let's take that as an opportunity to look at other locations. This would give people the ability to come to a place where they're familiar and then become familiar with their city government. It also means that we could use that as a town hall style event where it's more informational rather than the drudgery of business that sometimes doesn't encourage somebody to want to engage and participate. Second, I think we should use the online survey system for more rapid feedback for council and some of the commissions, rather than just the longer term things like the parks plan. I think if we do this, we'll get more individual contributors in that point, and we could have staff summarize that information, maybe even in a chart, at the beginning of each of the council presentations. And then third, I think city council needs to make more public appearances. And so if I was on city council, I would commit to doing that either at the Concerts on the Green, Highlands Day, 4th of July parade. I think that's a really important way to both take the temperature of the community and again, give a face to their government so that they're familiar with that. The other thing that I've noticed through all of the city council meetings that I've attended is that there wasn't as much of a focus on metrics. So I run a business, everything runs on data. Something performs well, we do more of it. If it doesn't, we do less of it or cut it out. We're a city, so it can't come always down to data. It's not that black and white, but we need to pay attention to the public benefit and the ROI. If I was seated on city council, I would make sure to put a focus on data and kind of the feedback loops for the decisions that the city council makes. I think we should have a better sense of that feedback timeline and perhaps using those quarterly town hall style meetings to say, okay, what projects have come into development? Have we been able to hire the people that we've been asking for? And be able to really say, this point in time, we're checking in on the things that happened over the last quarter or the last year. This would allow us to make better decisions, be held accountable for the success or failure, and to make quick changes when something isn't turning out as expected, as you all did with the moratorium. So one area where we obviously need to make some quick decisions, and have been and will continue to do so, is traffic. Residents of Issaquah obviously said that's their #1 issue, and so we need to put all of the cards on the table there, both regional and local. So I'm really pleased to see that we're looking at the transportation benefit districts later today. I think that provides an opportunity for some councilmanic borrowing. But I would also like us to look at our existing general fund surplus. You know, right now we've got 34% that's sitting in that surplus, $7 million. This is taxpayer money that's already been paid in. And if this is people's #1 issue, I think we need to look at that as an option. You know, we only need to keep 20% in there as the max required in that general fund, and I think we should use it. Additionally, I think later this year, looking at the concurrency plan is a really important way to address this and look at developer fees and how we might better assess that. I think that's also really important for schools to be able to address the impact fees there to maybe make the ability to get better fees. So it's for all these reasons that I'd like to be considered for the city council. I'm up to date. I'm willing to put into work so I can hit the ground running, and I bring ideas around metrics, public feedback, and traffic that I think are really important for the council in this time of transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. As noted earlier by the clerk, John Burrell Levine withdrew today, and so our next applicant is John Rittenhouse.
Good evening. I'm glad that we all could be here tonight because what we're doing tonight is important, and it's great to see a level of community involvement that matches the importance of what's being done. My name's John Rittenhouse, and I've been an Issaquah resident and registered voter since 1992. My first exposure to Issaquah was when I drove up from Southern Oregon for a job interview at Egghead Software. May it rest in peace. At that time, they were headquartered here. After the interview and a job offer, I drove from their offices in North Issaquah down Front Street to find lunch. And I saw for the first time Mount Rainier framed between the Issaquah Alps. And I stopped the car, and I called my wife, Jan, on a payphone. And I told her that they were waiting for my answer, and I would guarantee that she would love this place if I committed that day, which meant that she would be moving here sight unseen. That was a big leap of faith, and it was rewarded because we've happily lived on Squawk Mountain for the last 25 years. The Issaquah of 2018, though, is not the same as the Issaquah of 1992, but then neither is the state of Washington nor the United States as a whole. I'm here tonight because what I heard over again in the most recent election was some unhappiness with the direction the city's going and the accelerated pace of change. When this position opened, I gave it a lot of thought and decided to understand the opportunity as a call to act. Having served on the Issaquah City Council previously, I have no illusions about the time commitment required or the thanklessness of much of the work that you do. My commitment to you is that if I'm appointed to this position, I will do everything in my power during this term to ensure that current and future residents are as proud to call Issaquah home as I am. The Issaquah of 2018 has some significant and intractable issues. Growth continues to be a sore spot, with development increasingly appearing on forested hillsides with steep slopes, and where the scale and design of buildings in the central area leave residents with the feeling that this type of growth doesn't fit with Issaquah's essential character. Some things like traffic continue to vex residents as they see hundreds of new housing units going up without much visible change to mitigate the impact on local roads. These are hard problems, which not only require a deep dive into the city's comprehensive plan and municipal codes to make sure they're kept up to date with rapidly changing growth impacts, but also require strong regional cooperation to address common issues. Issaquah can no longer ignore changes in Covington or Black Diamond any more than Bellevue can ignore changes in Issaquah. In this regard, there are a couple of guiding principles I would bring to the council. First, that growth and density are inevitable, intentional, and can be beneficial as the city meets requirements of the State Growth Management Act. The GMA's guarantee is that in exchange for increased density within the city limits, we will avoid the kind of urban sprawl we see in places like Southern California, Las Vegas, and Phoenix. The second principle is that we have some control over how we grow. The GMA requires, quote, that we ensure that those public facilities necessary to support development shall be adequate to serve the development at the time the development is available for occupancy and use without decreasing current service levels below locally established minimum standards. Since our traffic level of service standards are under our control, we can and should ensure that our traffic flows improve in exchange for additional development. In addition, through changes to design standards, we can work to ensure that as more housing units and businesses are added to the central area, they will visually and architecturally fit with Issaquah's essential character. Along with having served on the Issaquah City Council, I also spent 2 years on the Planning Policy Commission. In addition to those governmental duties, I have served as a volunteer and board member for the Eastside Friends of Seniors, an organization committed to matching volunteers with seniors trying to remain independent in their own homes, the board of directors of the Together Center, a successful social services campus in Redmond, and 2 years as the operations manager of the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank. This is where my heart is, and I'd like to spend the rest of my time talking about how, as an Issaquah City Council member, I can help address the unmet needs of the most vulnerable members of our community. After graduating earlier this year from Community Emergency Response Team Training, I was happy to be asked to join an organizing meeting of the Functional Assessment Services Team, whose charter is to identify ways to assist residents who will need additional help during and after a natural disaster or similar event. These could be seniors, those with significant medical needs, folks who are blind or deaf or have limited mobility, those who speak a primary language other than English, or people who have an unbreakable bond with their pets. CERT training at all levels should continue to be a top priority for funding and support. But how do we help these same citizens before a disaster event strikes? I don't want to overwhelm you with dry statistics, but since stats are the mother's milk to policymakers, let me throw out some of the things we know about the need for services in our community. The food bank, for instance, serves upwards of 4,000 individuals a month who are food insecure. In addition, they coordinate food distributions during school breaks, serving over 3,000, and in the summer when school isn't in session, as well as year-round free clothing and toiletry distribution and a special holiday toy and clothing event in December. The Holiday Gift Barn served 550 families and 1,500 children in 2017. Of those persons served by the Food and Clothing Bank, over 60% are seniors over 65 or children under the age of 18. We also know, based on aggregated information available from the Issaquah School District, that roughly 75% of students eligible for free or reduced lunches are not clients of the food bank. The unmet need is great. Beyond just food and clothing, we see the homeless population exploding regionally and becoming more and more visible in Issaquah. One pervasive cause of homelessness in our region is rising rents, which are pricing a surprising number of people out of their homes. Seniors in particular are affected, where fixed incomes don't keep pace with the rising housing expenses. The city has taken steps to address these and other issues, with work being done at the Senior Center and planning underway for the Opportunity Center and a teen cafe. But there's much more that needs to be done. If I'm fortunate enough to be appointed to this position, I will use the platform to be a vocal advocate for the social service needs of segments of our population that are too often hidden and forgotten. This is going to sound corny, but my vision for Issaquah has always been Mayberry. And I'm not talking about the 1950s Mayberry where nothing ever changes or everybody's white, but the universal Mayberry, where neighbors know and take care of one another, challenges aren't ignored, but rather addressed with an eye toward doing what's right, not what's expedient, and where everybody would rather be there than not be there. I would welcome the opportunity to help the City Council work toward that ideal. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next up is Thomas Pucci.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Pauly, fellow citizens of Issaquah. Pretty excited to be here. My name's Tom Pucci. I live in the Issaquah Highlands along with a lot of other people, and I have a great wife that I've been married to longer than maybe most of you, as I look around, have been alive. And she's a great woman. We have a daughter, and I have now the experience of maybe one of the finest things to happen in life. I am a grandfather of two granddaughters, so it's great. The only thing I need in addition to that is to be part of the city council. I guess I want to start by saying that my interest in this, as a citizen of Issaquah, doesn't stem from sort of any weakness that I see among the city leaders. Actually, it's more an opportunity to work with the city leaders, collaborate with the city leaders, be a part of that, to help this city capitalize on the opportunities that are out there, but also deal with the problems that we've talked about here for the last hour or so, and I guess we all sort of know what many of those are. I'm going to focus on two of the questions that were asked. The first is, why do I want to do this? I think that's an important question, and when I first thought about this, I really didn't know why I wanted to do it, so I started to think, why am I interested in a role like this? And I think the answer is because I think at this point in my life, I'm very interested in kind of giving back to the city in which I live. I do interact a lot with government, and not so much at this level, I must say. It's the first time I've met every one of you was tonight. But I have a long history of working with the Washington State Legislature. I'm a certified public accountant. That means I spend most of my time on financial matters and on tax matters. I'm actually a tax guy more than I am a finance person. So I've testified before the state legislature on things like the impact of legislation, the impact of bills, the cost, the revenue, impact, fiscal note, whatever those things may be. And it occurred to me that finance experience, that experience with tax, that experience that I've had over the years providing leadership in an assortment of roles might be valuable to the citizens of the city and to the council. And so as I focus back on, okay, so that's the why, but what is it that I bring? You know, it kind of overlaps, right? I mean, I bring that leadership, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I will say that I've led large teams of people, and as other folks have commented, leading a team and being a good team member and bringing the right stakeholders to the table, dealing with diverse groups of people, diverse personalities, and diverse perspectives is something I've done in my current role at Expedia and something I've done over the years in global consulting and public accounting firms like PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I think that having an appreciation for, you know, a tax person, a finance person, dealing with a technology person or other people that come from a different vantage point is not something I really understood until I tried to do it. And then I realized there was a lot of miscommunication between what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to communicate and what the other person may be trying to communicate to me. And I think the first thing you have to recognize is that diversity brings people in from different perspectives, and you really have to understand those perspectives best that you can. And you have to also, I think, appreciate that they don't necessarily understand your perspective. But I think the commonality here is that we all want good things for this city, and I think from my perspective, the opportunity to help lead and make those decisions that we need, whether they're grabbing opportunities or trying to solve problems, and I've heard a number of them mentioned tonight, right? We've got traffic problems, we've got congestion, we've got growth, we've got maybe some public safety concerns as well. Just to mention a few, I want to be part of solving those problems, and I have a lot of experience in solving those problems. I've mentioned that I've testified before legislative committees on the impact of legislation. I've also helped the Washington State Department of Revenue, City of Seattle, meet with both of those groups on a quarterly basis to really work through opportunities and changes that are happening in those cities that impact the business community and the residents of those cities. So I'm not going to belabor this. I'll just mention that I'm a first-generation American. I never thought I'd be looking at an opportunity like this, and I'm glad I am. And I'm also very impressed by the speakers that have gone before me. So I think you have a tough job, but I think you're going to have you're going to make the right choice because there's a lot of good choices among these candidates. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tom. Next up, Bryan Weinstein.
My name is Bryan Weinstein. I've lived in Issaquah for more than 17 years. I have a degree in business administration from the University of Southern California. I'm a retired California and Oregon certified public accountant. I've served as an auditor, a tax accountant, forensic accountant, controller, and chief financial officer. I've worked at Microsoft for 14 years, currently as a software development engineer. This is my 6th year as a volunteer teacher at Issaquah High School in the Career Technical Education, Sales, and Business Marketing program. I've previously served on the Issaquah Planning Policy Commission, have been a city council candidate, and was appointed spokesperson for the Issaquah Traffic Bond No Committee by Mayor Butler and City Council. I'd like to briefly answer some of the required questions and then move on to something more personal. I believe community concerns must be addressed in ways that are coherent and holistic. Growth, traffic, infrastructure, taxes, services, quality of life. There has to be a common thread that connects these to our code, policies, budget, and visions. Issaquah residents, people, and businesses should find that council decisions make their lives better. Many of our challenges are self-made. Growth, traffic, services, infrastructure, fiscal health. I will insist that our problems and issues be addressed and resolved now, not kicked down the road. For example, growth needs to pay for itself and bring a public benefit. Where this does not happen, I will actively seek alternatives. With regional challenges, I will be mindful of opportunities to lead and advocate for our Issaquah solutions in partnership with other localities in the most effective and collaborative ways possible. As a member of the council, it's my job to listen, be flexible, and represent Issaquah, and in doing so, get the most accurate and complete information that helps me make decisions that benefit our community. The earliest that I can identify issues, bring all parties together to listen, understand, and build at the beginning, rather than de-escalate at the end. This is how I will seek to resolve divisions. My accountability is to what makes life better in Issaquah for all of us. We are stewards of the environment. I forever hear the words of Ruth Keyes warning us of the cumulative effects of our actions. Future generations have entrusted us with treasures, our water, our creeks, streams, lakes, habitats, and our forested hillsides. As to growing pains, we need transparency of process and an acknowledgement that our growth is currently seen by many as eroding the quality of life and character in our town. Our policies need to do better in identifying what we desire to be as a community in the future, and the council must insist on that vision in all its deliberations and initiate effective policy. And when required, we must hold administration and staff accountable. When residents see benefit from growth through addition of required infrastructure, services, jobs, public safety, and amenities, we will be building on the confidence that our future visions are possible. Looking at housing supply, labor reports indicate a large disparity in the wages paid in Issaquah. Lots of highs and lows, but not much in between those living wage jobs. We need to bring a wider variety of employment opportunities to Issaquah. I would like to tie future growth to job creation and infrastructure improvement. We should also consider the affordable housing mix that is offered and insist that new development include a variety of affordability options directed towards the lower end of the housing spectrum where there is a disparity between supply and demand. And no resident should ever be priced out of our community. My wish is to engage our residents in early, two-way, continuous, and honest dialogue that incorporates their desires in our decisions to re-earn trust. We can do better in demonstrating that we listen and hear our residents. You're probably asking why I'm here. I know I am. Our democratic process requires we have a debate about the issues of the day, impactful issues. I got involved probably like everyone in this room. What are our options? We see something that we think can be made better. So we write letters, we speak at public meetings, we apply to commissions, and we run for office. The first time I ran for office, I talked too much and listened too little. The second time, I knew I was very unlikely to win against Council President Fred Butler, but I ran because we needed debate. The debate was about a city that did not listen to residents. But now, look at how things have changed. Our city works harder to listen to residents and encourages people more than ever before to be involved. As evidence, I've had the opportunity to engage with each of you one-on-one, and in the past, that would not have been possible. After the last election, I had to put this open position under serious consideration and initially declined to consider it. But the number of phone calls and emails that I received from residents I'd never met or folks who stopped me cold in the street saying I must apply for this were community voices that I could not ignore. People asked me to do this. But I'm not perfect. I have weaknesses. Sometimes they may seem too critical. My training as a forensic accountant and an engineer requires me to find answers. I'm asked all the time, Bryan, what is the answer? As city council member, we're talking about things that are subjective, and we encounter constraints that fluctuate, requirements that change, and unrealistic timelines. We don't have easy, immediate answers because if the question is before the city council, easy, immediate answers don't exist. One of my biggest learnings is that I've had to think differently for a council position. It's not about me and my answers. It's about the public and their desires and how to make their life better. This selection process is not about me, but you and the aspirations that you have for this city and who will best help you achieve that success. It's also about being able to transition to being a city councilor that is for things rather than being an activist who's sometimes against them. Yesterday was Dr. King's birthday, and I found a quote that's timely. A genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus. Never before in Issaquah have we had a council capable of making so much positive impact in our community and beyond. You are the base for a state senator, congressional candidates, and mayoral candidates. To be now at the apex of such forward thinking and the opportunities of the future with a new mayor, administration, and council is something that I would like to be a part of. I have abilities that I can contribute, but more importantly, we may all have something to learn from so many of our residents. We have opportunities to weave into our decisions the aspirational voices of people in our community. People like Elizabeth Maupin, who encourages us to regard the needs of the poorest among us as we consider homelessness and affordable housing, or the most vulnerable among us as we consider human services. Do we demonstrate the same level of compassion and consideration towards residents who need help as we see in others who aspire and perform these acts of compassion and kindness? Or longtime business owners like Skip Rowley, whose family history dates to our pioneer days. He is a passionate advocate for the success of many small businesses that operate within Issaquah. Do we consider as a city or community that his hopes and future success can be beneficial to us in ways other than just municipal revenue? How do we incorporate the visions of these people in our thoughts and decisions and all the other voices that we listen to, some of them lesser known and heard infrequently, but equally as important? Joining you on the council is not something I take lightly. It's something I've thought long and hard about. I promise to work hard every day and overcome my own challenges and deficiencies. I will be flexible and listen, keep an open mind to learn, and look forward to being a part of a city council that leads Issaquah to greatness. Thank you for this final opportunity to share my thoughts with you.
Thank you, Bryan. Next up, Victoria Hunt.
Good evening, City Council, Madam Mayor, fellow applicants, and viewers. My name is Vicki Hunt. The decisions you all make affect the day-to-day lives of people living and working in Issaquah now. The decisions you make will also affect people living and working in Issaquah 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now, even farther out than that. I think that makes the work that you do an awesome responsibility. I also think that it means you are searching for solutions to a particularly tricky genre of problems. Because in searching for solutions to immediate issues, those same solutions will need to address the problems of the future. Things like roads and infrastructure and buildings, it can last 5 years, 10 years, 50 years from now, or in some cases even further out than that. I believe I would be a particularly effective member of Issaquah City Council because I have professional experience applying a long-term lens to complex problems. I have a professional background in urban planning as well as in land management. I worked as affiliate faculty at University of Washington in the Urban Design and Planning Department in 2016 and 2017. They are doing cutting-edge research at University of Washington in the urban planning department. For example, I worked with students that are modeling how traffic will change as the proportion of cars changes and becomes more automated than the cars we see on the roads today. As a member of City Council, I would be motivated to keep up on the latest technologies and make sure that Issaquah's solutions are state-of-the-art. I also have experience, in addition to urban planning, in land management. I worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for over 6 years as a consultant on invasive species management, wetland restoration, and on prairie restoration in the Midwestern United States. These are all ecological systems, and so they operate on ecological timeframes, meaning that you really need to apply a long-term lens to these problems. Managers will take actions, and on a restoration, you don't expect to see the outcome within the next few minutes or hours, days, sometimes even within that decade. And so through that experience, I really learned to apply a long-term lens to problem solving. These are complex problems. And in addition to that, I worked with large groups of stakeholders, sometimes with competing interests, sometimes contentious decision-making settings. And I learned to work in those sorts of situations where we have lots of perspectives brought to the table to make decisions. And I believe that that experience would serve me well on City Council. I wanted to apply my professional background in urban planning and land management in my hometown, which is Issaquah. And so I applied for the Planning Policy Commission this last year, and I have been serving since this last application cycle for Planning Policy Commission. It was a busy year for the Planning Policy Commission. We worked very hard on the moratorium work items, the moratorium on certain kinds of building. And for me, it was a great opportunity to take a deep dive into the opportunities and the issues facing Issaquah today. I also would represent a perspective that I believe is not currently represented on council, and that is a person that has invested in the Issaquah of today by starting a family here in the last few years. My husband and I moved to Squawk Mountain about 4 years ago, and we love it there. We have 2 children. I have a 3.5-year-old daughter, and her favorite thing about living in Issaquah are the parks, particularly the Depot Park and the trolley, which is over there. And we also have a 6-month-old baby boy. He just turned 6 months, and his favorite thing about living in Issaquah is to be determined. We need to talk about affordable housing in Issaquah. I believe, if I use my long-term lens, that our current trend is completely untenable. I was on the Planning Policy Commission. I worked on the Housing Strategy Work Plan, and I think that there is a lot of good content in that strategy work plan and that it's a good starting place. But for example, it points out that for 30 to 50% of the AMI area median income, we have a target of 12% of our housing stock to be at that level, and we currently have 3%. So that gap has not been narrowing, it has been widening, and we really need to change the direction, and we really need to narrow the gap between the housing stock that we have and the need for affordable housing that we see in the community. I believe that those stats reflect what we all know to be true. Talking with our neighbors, talking with our fellow community members, it can be hard to find an affordable place to live. A lot of people choose not to live here because of that reason, or they find that their quality of life is eroded by the fact that they are paying more than they can afford to live in Issaquah. And so I really think we need to work through that housing strategy work plan. There are 9 strategies, and to give those teeth, we really need to back them up with code and make sure that we follow through and turn those words into a difference in the experience for people living in Issaquah. Also, on affordable housing, I think that the transit-oriented development that is going to go in by the Issaquah Transit Center is a hugely exciting opportunity, but it will set a precedent, and I believe we need to get it right. It will be vertical mixed use. It will be a public-private partnership. It's right by transit, and so that means that there will be less car trips, and so it will be addressing that need as well. And it is also in a very amenity-filled part of town, and it will be a great first step, I think, towards addressing some of our affordability issues in the city, because it will have affordable units. I would really like to be part of the discussions on City Council to make sure that that transit-oriented development is the success that I believe it can be, and that it is a model not only for Issaquah, but for the region. Let's also make sure that as Issaquah becomes an increasingly vibrant community, that we stay a verdant community. I have a professional background in ecology, and I know that a lot of people in our community feel very strongly that one of our most important and most special things about living in Issaquah is our beautiful natural setting, our hillsides, our forested hillsides, our riparian areas, and our parks and our trails. We are the trailhead city. The citizen survey from 2017, which was mentioned earlier, found that one of their core conclusions was that Issaquah residents appreciate the natural environment. And I think that should come as no surprise to any of us, but I think I would be a particularly effective member of City Council to make sure that we are good stewards of our green spaces and our open spaces because of my background in ecology, and I have a PhD in ecology. I really like to understand how nature works with the built environment and how we can maintain our beautiful natural setting for the current generation who can enjoy it and for future generations to come. I would ask that you consider, in addition to my presentation and my application materials, 2 letters of recommendation, and I thank both of the people that wrote letters for me. They are from Joan Probola, who I know you all know, and from Marina Alberti, who is a professor that I worked with at University of Washington in the Urban Design and Planning Department. And I think my presentation really boils down to 2 things. One, I have a background in urban design and planning and would use it to apply a long-term lens to find solutions to Issaquah's problems. And 2, I'm a new voice, but because of my service on Planning Policy Commission, I would be a knowledgeable voice. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight and for making my case why I want to work with you on City Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vicki. I'm going to talk with the city clerk now. Our next applicant, Rick Swanson, is not available to come, but was planning on calling in.
Can you hear us? I can. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rick Swanson. I want to start by thanking Tina for arranging me the ability to attend this meeting virtually. I'm speaking to you tonight from Miami Beach, Florida, which, if you get on a map, could not be further away from Issaquah, Washington. I'm attending a business conference as part of my consulting practice, and I'm honored by consideration for this role, and I'm also honored to participate in this process along with the other candidates. So thank you for your time, and thank you for allowing me to participate by remote control here. So I thought I'd take my time tonight by just running through some of the questions that were asked on the application and briefly give you some of my responses, beginning with the question of, why do you want to serve? Well, my family moved to Issaquah in 2006. Both of my kids attended Issaquah High School. I'm currently the president of Bridges Italis HOA. And a little more than a year ago at a Christmas party dinner, a group of neighbors asked me to run for city council. Many of us became concerned up in Talis when a landslide occurred in our community. As many of you are aware, as all of you are aware, we call it Plastic Mountain over there. And we became concerned that the city was unprepared for this development. And forgive me for being critical, but a lot of us asked if Issaquah can't, manage a little development up in Talis, how can we expect them to manage the city into the future? And that's why I decided to get involved. and I ran for seat number 2 in November. And as many of you know, Mariah cleaned my clock. I got clobbered. It wasn't even close. But I did spend enough time on the job. I know that she ultimately outworked me, but I did spend enough time campaigning to know that I have something I can bring to the job. And so I'd like to talk to you about that now. What would I bring to Issaquah City Council? For the past 10 years, I've been the program director and marketing director at King 5 in Seattle. It's one of the most honored and trusted television stations in America. In 2015, we were honored with the Service to America Award by the National Association of Broadcasters. That year, we partnered with over 85 community organizations, and I personally attended over 115 nonprofit events. And that experience taught me 3 valuable lessons. First, listen well. You can't solve problems unless you understand all of the issues. In fact, one of the 7 habits of highly effective people is first, seek to understand before being understood. Second, ask hard questions, beginning with the question why. And I was pleased to see that why was the first question in the prompts to all the candidates. Because if you don't know why we are doing something, then the who, what, when, and where become much harder questions to answer. And third, most importantly, hold people accountable. Because you can't get big things done unless people do what they promised to do. And these are the qualities I think we need in City Council, and these are the qualities that I would bring to the job. So what are the biggest opportunities facing Issaquah? Well, our future looks bright. The economy is strong. Families are moving to the Northwest like never before, and they need strong communities like Issaquah to call home. But we're really at a crossroads right now. We're kind of Bambi in the headlights with all of this growth. But the fact of the matter is we need both trees and we need families. But the challenge that we face is we don't have a shared vision for the future. This was brought home to me during the door knocking time that I did. People don't understand the vision for Issaquah. Who are we as a community? What are we trying to be together? This, I think, is our greatest challenge and the one facing City Council today. Who are we as a community? Let's talk about making hard choices. In my experience, there's always an answer, but context and information is key. Smaller decisions fit into a larger context. If you have a shared understanding of the larger context, if you have that vision, then the smaller decisions become much easier to make. However, it takes discipline and hard work to create the shared vision. That's the hard work that faces us. Then you also need a mountain of information. I got to know Bryan during the campaign, and as he will tell you, decisions are often based upon opinions and feelings. That's human nature. But it takes discipline to move past those and make decisions and feelings and rely on facts and information. And if you don't have enough facts and information, you can't make a good decision. And then most importantly, a decision needs to be communicated well. Most conflicts occur from a lack of communication. What are the facts? How does this decision fit into the larger context? If we can check these boxes, then we'll have the confidence of knowing we did everything we could to make a good decision. And people may disagree with the answer, they disagree with the outcome, but they'll agree with the process. So I can see that I'm beginning to run out of time, but you know, what would I do regionally? My passion lies in the arts. I believe in the health and vitality of the community can be measured by its commitment to the arts, and I would put my time in finding places in schools, in regional support. I raised a lot of money for the Arts Fund, Seattle Art Museum, Pacific Northwest Ballet. These are the areas that I would put my time and energy into. You know, managing growth. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we need a brilliant, strong, robust plan. As Franklin once said, failing to plan is planning to fail. I know what it takes to make a good plan in business, and I would intend to find out what it takes to create a good city plan. What would I hope to accomplish? As I promised in the campaign, I would organize a listening panel made up of concerned citizens from around Issaquah, involving HOA presidents, other concerned citizens, community groups. All these communities need a voice in our government, and I think it's the responsibility of city council to reach out to these constituents and to listen well. And how would we keep Issaquah affordable? Ladies and gentlemen, we have to grow. We have to manage the growth. We also have to have a local economy. We need both jobs and growth, because scarcity of options is what drives up costs. So managing growth, building a multifaceted economy are key to all of this. Looking at my watch, I know I'm out of time. Again, I want to thank you for your consideration. I look forward to meeting all of you in person next week, and I appreciate very much the time this evening. How did I do?
Thank you, Rick. So our last applicant this evening is Zach Hall.
A little taller. All right, Mayor Pauly, members of the Issaquah City Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. For those of you who don't already know me, my name is Zach Hall. Issaquah is my hometown. I had my first job here in Issaquah. I graduated high school here in Issaquah. I became an Eagle Scout here in Issaquah. As a student at the University of Washington, I came home nearly every weekend to be right here in Issaquah. I love everything about living in our best of the Northwest town. In fact, of the 13 other candidates you just heard from, only one has lived in Issaquah longer than me. John, you beat me by 4 years. So naturally, as a native and as a millennial, the future of Issaquah feels personal to me. Many of the decisions made by the City Council today, well, I'm already running out of time, will define the next generation of living in Issaquah. In my mind, we can build a balanced, community-minded Issaquah of the future by focusing on policies that will protect the quality of life Issaquah residents enjoy for generations to come. Focusing on policies that promote housing affordability, dissuade pass-through traffic, protect our beautiful environment, and bring people and government closer together. I want to take a moment now to discuss some of the potential policies I'd support as an Issaquah City Council member. Housing affordability. I have every intention of living in Issaquah for the rest of my life, but more and more, Issaquah is pricing me and others like me out. It's becoming more and more difficult for young natives to stay. Not just young natives either, any native, people who feel a strong connection to this city and who would choose to do good in our community. At what point do we ask ourselves, can we afford not to invest in affordable housing? We cannot prioritize new growth and new residents over the people who live and contribute in our community today. Issaquah needs to offer housing options for people of all incomes. I applaud the City Council's recent efforts to adopt more inclusionary zoning and begin an exciting new transportation-oriented development project, but an affordable Issaquah is still far off. As a City Council member, I'd advocate for creative solutions to this difficult issue. Incentivizing the preservation of our existing housing stock and exploring the use of multifamily tax exemptions for older buildings, requiring mixed-use, mixed-income projects, giving priority to accessory dwelling unit projects, changing the city code to allow for micro-apartments because smaller lifestyles cost less, and requiring even more inclusionary zoning in our residential development agreements. Pass-through traffic. Nothing would help protect our city's quality of life better than eliminating regional pass-through traffic in downtown Issaquah. By freeing this space of commuters, we'd help empower residents to enjoy local businesses, downtown restaurants, parks and trails, and other benefits that defines Issaquah's unique character. To do this, we have to put everything on the table. The City Council has taken an important first step by creating a transportation-focused City Commission. As a City Council member, I'd ask this commission to focus on ideas that prioritize movement around town. In my mind, this means studying how intelligent traffic lights, turning lanes, tolling, and urban-feeling roadways can support our residents driving around town and dissuade commuters from driving through it. Environmental stewardship. It's exactly that. We have to think of ourselves as stewards of this incredible landscape we've inherited. Most importantly, that means identifying creative and resourceful solutions to preserve and protect our beautiful hillsides, a key feature of Issaquah's unique character. Environmental stewardship also means taking meaningful local action to combat climate change. There's no need to debate climate change, the causes of climate change here at the municipal level, but there is an imperative to discuss readiness. For example, local water suppliers like Cascade Water Alliance rely on melting snowpack to provide clean, safe drinking water. Over time, as our regional climate creates less and less snowpack, water security will become a serious issue. Also, given our proximity to state forests and other natural areas, the potential for forest fire only increases. As a member of the Issaquah City Council, I'd advocate the city favor all new construction be built to at least a Built Green 4-star certification. I'd support the use of community-based solar energy projects in Issaquah, and I'd seek appointment to the King County Cities Climate Collaboration. These are important first steps. Equally important is a need for the city to begin a discussion with professionals and the community. Community engagement. If the goal is to bring people and government closer together, the first step is right here in City Hall. I think the city can improve the way it collects public opinion during city council meetings by asking experts who testify up here and answer the city council's questions to stay and provide the same opportunity for the community. By publishing frequently asked audience questions to the city's website, along with an official comment by city staff, and never scheduling an agenda bill's public hearing and official vote for the same evening, which leads the public to believe the city council has already decided its outcome. The next step is to leave City Hall. Our elected representatives should themselves seek out public opinion from the many communities that make up Issaquah. Recently, I had the opportunity to knock on thousands of Issaquah doors. This was an incredible experience for me. Many of the conversations I had were full of hope and inspiration. Many of them also grew out of frustration and disappointment. As city council members, I'm sure you've each had similar experiences filled with highs and filled with lows that fuel your drive for public service. I feel that same drive. As a member of the Issaquah City Council, I commit to continue this rewarding experience. I commit to making every effort I can to meet with and hear from as many Issaquah residents as I can. Finally, having grown up in the digital age, I see the pizzas here, I'd be remiss not to mention the incredible potential of social media. For example, I think the idea of hosting virtual town halls using platforms like Facebook Live creates an opportunity for Issaquah residents to communicate with the City Council in a way that feels comfortable and convenient to them. What it comes down to is this. I strongly believe that a city council that actively and thoughtfully reaches out into its community not only taps into a wonderful wealth of knowledge and expertise, it helps build strong a sense of trust between people and government. So, why am I the right choice to fill the city council's vacant seat? In me, you'll find a colleague who values collaboration and open-mindedness and independent thinking and positivity and hard work and challenge and patience. In me, you'll find a teammate. Perspective is another word that comes to mind. I told you earlier that as a millennial and lifelong resident, Issaquah's future feels personal to me. One day I'll buy my first home here. One day I'll get married and raise my kids here, although we don't have to jump to that moment quite yet. A little bit more time. I think the City Council could really benefit from that kind of perspective. A holistic blend of forward-thinking and community-rooted thought. Thank you again for your time and attention. I'll look forward to hearing your decision.
Thank you, Zach. That was our last applicant for this evening. Just want to add a few comments here. I'm not sure who mentioned it, but somebody talked about the deep bench. We have an incredibly deep bench in Issaquah. I am sure council members sitting up here are feeling the same sense of pride that I have. I'm just glad they're making the decision this time and not me. The council will be voting on this at a future meeting. I appreciated all of the energy and caring and respectful nature that I heard in the presentations this evening, respectful to your fellow applicants as well. Hearing the experience and the training and the expertise that you could bring to our council, it's amazing. So I want to thank all of you for having the courage to step forward and participate in this evening. Somebody also mentioned, I believe it was Bob, that he wanted the information to be available on our on each candidate. It is available on our website for anyone watching this evening or watching on YouTube later on. You can see all of the information that the council was provided prior to the meeting. I also encourage you to join us on January 23rd at 5:30 p.m. in the Eagle Room across the street for an informal meet and greet. The applicants, council, and community are all invited to attend. And if you've been watching, you're here this evening or watching, and you'd like to provide feedback, the council invites residents to provide feedback regarding criteria, desired qualities, or qualifications they should consider when filling the vacant seat. Please submit your comments via email to the citycouncil@issaquahwa.gov. The next steps, council expects to fill this vacancy on February 5th, and if the appointee is present at the meeting, the oath of office may be conducted then. The appointee to the vacant seat will serve until the November 2019 general election is certified. At this point in time, the council will recess into executive session to discuss qualifications of the applicants per RCW 42.30.110, bracket 1, bracket H. The item is expected to take approximately 30 minutes, and just in case you haven't participated in one before, executive sessions are closed to the public. Thank you very much for coming tonight. We are going into executive session at 6:50. We're now recessed.